Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're joining us for the first time. My name is Emma and I'm going to share with you my story of interstitial cystitis. If you don't know what this is, interstitial cystitis is a chronic illness. It's a bladder condition, sometimes also described as painful bladder syndrome. Interstitial cystitis, or IC as it's commonly coined, is a really debilitating illness. It's something that they call a silent illness because you may not necessarily look sick, but on the inside, you're flaring, your whole body is just fighting against you. It can also go hand in hand with other things like chronic fatigue and other conditions. So pairing that with just trying to do your day-to-day normal life can be absolutely exhausting. If you are someone who's watching this today and you're currently dealing with this and having a lot of flare-ups, I'm so sorry, but just know that it does get better, and I'm going to try and help you as much as I can in this video to heal in the most natural and effective way possible. The only thing I ask that you bring to this is having a completely open mind and just allowing a different time frame for yourself than maybe what happened for me. We're all such different people, and in terms of healing from the diagnosis to getting some treatment, managing your symptoms, and eventually feeling that you have healed in a way from this illness and you're able to live with it, is a unique journey for each and every one of us. So I hope that some of what I share today can help you, but I do have to put in a disclaimer. I'm not a GP, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. I hope this information is useful, but please do get in touch with a specialist or a medical professional who can give you some proper advice. I'm currently 30 years old, and my story begins when I was about 22. I was constantly getting UTIs. I had a lot of pain and unexplained sort of nerve pain symptoms, continuously feeling like I had a UTI, and everybody would just do the standard thing where you'd go in, you do a pee sample for the doctor, they give you some antibiotics, and they send you home. And I was doing this once a month, essentially. So I basically had a constant UTI. This is essentially how I would describe to a stranger who's unaware of the illness what interstitial cystitis feels like. It's essentially like having a UTI every day of your life. It got so severe for me that I got to a point where I didn't feel like I could hold down full-time employment anymore. I was pretty much going to the bathroom in excess of 40 to 50 times a day because I just felt like I'd never fully emptied my bladder, and I was in so much pain that I was just sitting at my work desk thinking, I can't concentrate on anything else than wanting to try and feel better. At this point, I hadn't really looked too much into what I could do to change my diet or my lifestyle, because as far as I understood from the GPs that I'd been to see, it was just a UTI, and it was a recurring almost UTI with just not enough bacteria in the reading to qualify it as being an actual UTI. So they were essentially making it out like I was the girl who cried wolf and there was nothing wrong with me. So again, they'd send me away. And at this point, I got extremely frustrated. I felt like nobody wanted to help me. I didn't understand why a 22-year-old girl who exercises 5 to 6 times a week and eats a relatively healthy diet would be having such problems when I could see all of my friends around me having absolutely no issues like this at all. Finally, I decided to swap GPs. I went and saw a random GP just out of my luck. He happened to know a specialist who works in this kind of thing. So he initially sat there, asked me what was wrong, as a general doctor would, and ended up printing out a pile of paper which was this thick of all of the times that I'd had a UTI or an almost UTI that had been essentially misdiagnosed by these GPs over all the years. He then suggested that I go and see a urogynecologist, which is obviously a specialist who studied urology and gynecology, so specializing in females who have certain bladder symptoms as well. So I was like, sign me up. I've got nothing to lose at this point. I don't even care how much it costs. I just don't want to be in pain anymore. So I went and saw this specialist. His name was Dr. Yiklim. He works in Melbourne up in Heidelberg, and he was absolutely amazing. He was the first person who actually made me feel understood and completely validated my concerns and my idea that there was something wrong with me. From the moment I stepped into his office, I had a feeling that this specialist knew exactly what he was talking about. He had a lot of experience across a bunch of different conditions, and he suggested to me that it could be interstitial cystitis, endometriosis, or something going on with my bowels. So he suggested that I immediately book in for some explorative surgery where they do a bunch of keyholes and also a laparoscopy, which is through your belly button. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, but essentially that was what I went and had. So I booked in with him through a women's hospital on that side of town, and it was in and out, just simple day surgery. Although I will say the recovery from the laparoscopy through your belly button can take a little while. I felt that I couldn't do any ab exercises at the gym for quite a while afterwards, but to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, I would absolutely say if someone recommends that you go and do this, just go and have it done. It was almost relatively painless. I literally cannot see the scars anymore. They've completely faded off, and it gave me the answers I needed, which was that I was diagnosed finally with interstitial cystitis. Now, that's obviously nothing to celebrate because we all know how horrible this is, but I was just so thankful that someone had finally diagnosed what was wrong with me so I could start working out how to treat and manage this condition and get back to living my life. As part of this initial surgery, he also performed a hydrodistension, which is where I think they just fill up your bladder with water and stretch it, but it also flushes it out to try and get rid of some of that bad bacteria that's been in there. But what I saw after the examination was some camera photos from the pinhole cameras they put up inside you. Gross, I know. But it was, my bladder on the inside looked like a bloodshot eye. It was actually so red and inflamed, and all the veins were so angry and sticking out that it was really clear that this was a problem that needed immediate attention. The most valuable thing I immediately gained out of our consultation was that I needed to change my diet. I suppose this should have been really obvious before, but because I didn't know that I had a chronic illness, I was just eating my normal foods, which I thought were healthy. And of course, when you get a UTI, you would have cranberry juice or take some Ural, or maybe just take the antibiotics that the doctor has prescribed to you. But when you have interstitial cystitis, cranberry juice can be an irritant, antibiotics are an irritant, and things like Ural are okay, but nothing is going to be better than just having water to completely flush yourself out, and also taking some alternative supplements, which I'll get into a bit later. So he directed my attention to a website which was called ichelp.org. I'll leave the link in the comments down below. And I went onto this and found a food list, which essentially gave you an entire idea of how you can transform your diet into foods that are complete no-nos, maybe okay to try, and foods that actually provide healing properties and can really calm down what's going on down there to prevent you from having a flare. I would essentially say this is like following an alkaline diet, although it's not a diet in the traditional sense that it's not for weight loss, it's obviously for healing your body, in the same way that somebody might do an elimination diet when they have a particular food allergy. So on the downside, I am lactose intolerant, and a lot of the healing superfoods in this list were dairy products. So I really had to work pretty hard to find other alternatives that could help reduce my flares and my symptoms that would fit into my specific dietary needs. If you're interested in looking up an easy to find app that also has this same food list, there's one called the ICN food list. I'll just show you it on my phone. So the ICN food list is a $2.99 app you can download from the App Store on your iPhone. I assume it'll be on Android as well. And that will give you that same list I'm talking about on the website, but just in an easy to follow format that's at your fingertips. So if you were out having food at a restaurant with friends, you'd be able to reference this food plan and be able to remove ingredients or find out what it is you can and can't have. This is an extremely important step to me, and definitely not one to be overlooked, because I was in a lot of interstitial cystitis groups on Facebook, and I found that so many people in there were like, I'm having a flare, and then I'd look at the food they were eating and I thought, are you joking? Like, you can't be having sausages or processed meat or tomatoes and There's also a lot of people who would just take a medication. I think there's a thing called pre-leaf, and they would take that and then eat tomatoes. And I thought, that's fine if you obviously want to have that food once or twice, because it is a pain in the ass to completely cut out food groups. But if you're taking your healing seriously, you really should just not touch those foods at all. I definitely don't include tomato in my diet to this day, even though I've healed. If I'm really, really craving it, I might have it, but I know that it will cause a flare. So I don't really understand the point of taking a medication that will essentially just be a band-aid solution to the real problem. I completely understand that that's a pretty tough stance to take, but when it comes to health, I just think your health is an absolute priority, and it's kind of like anything else in your life that you really treasure or want to look after. If you're gonna have a half-assed approach to it, then you're gonna get half-assed results. And me personally, I would rather be completely healed so that I can actually enjoy simple things in life like a glass of wine, because my body is so under control from avoiding these problematic foods that I can allow myself to slip up every now and then. Something that I feel is really important to discuss around this illness is how misunderstood it can be. And I just want this to be a really safe space for you where I can say I am completely on your side. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I've been there. I've had some really dark days where I felt completely anxious and depressed. I didn't want to go to social situations. I didn't want to go to work. I avoided being in relationships because even just having sex or going out for a night of drinks with friends would completely trigger a flare-up, and it made me feel like my quality of life was worthless, really. Like, what was the point of even going on an overseas holiday because I wouldn't be able to get the right medical care? Or what was the point of going out on a date because I'd sound like a picky eater because my diet was so difficult to get on top of at the time? Really just want to get the message out there that it does get better. I know how painful it can be and how it feels like some days there is just absolutely no relief, but it's so important that you just be really kind to yourself and don't try and push yourself on those days to do something like go to the gym or attend a social situation. Just stay at home, rest, try and do the absolute best you can to heal your body, and the people around you that are part of a really good support network, which I hope you have, will be understanding, because at the end of the day, we're all dealing with something. That is the truth. And if you feel brave enough to explain this to a close friend or your parents or your partner, then it won't feel so isolating and like you're alone all the time. I think part of the difficult part when you are going through a flare is watching your family and friends just living their normal lives and feeling really envious of that. But I think it's like the old saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And you're just going to be borrowing happiness from yourself if you're trying to compare your journey or your life or what you're dealing with anybody else, because we're all so different. On my worst days, I would say the pain was a 7, and I don't want to say a 10 because I feel like when you're in hospital and they're like, okay, sweetie, what's the pain level between 0 and 10? And I'm like, well, I assume 10 is like I've literally just lost an arm, so I don't want to say 10. But I'm like, when you're going through these feelings and you're doubled over in pain and I've got a wheat pack on and I can barely be bothered to drink water because I know how painful it's going to be to try and pee later, then I'd say a 7 is pretty reasonable. On top of that, after I had my initial surgery, I gained a bit of weight. I really wasn't motivated to exercise, especially because of how much pain I was in when I was flaring. So that sort of added to my anxiety and depression at the time as well. So all in all, it definitely had a really negative effect on my mental health. I want to go over a few notes that I wrote down about a couple of ways that you can try and relax when you're having a bad day. And this really will help you along the way when when you're trying to manage your symptoms and work your way towards healing your body. My first point would be to lower the stress in your life. That means any people that are taking up too much of your time and attention, and it also just means the way that your body is actually feeling. So for me, a good day of self-care at home can really lower my stress levels. Hot shower or a bath if you have one. Maybe you can book yourself in for a massage at a local therapy place. Maybe you can take yourself for a pedicure. Just do something that is a really relaxing and calming activity that falls under the category of self-care, and just write it off as you needing an afternoon to just take care of yourself. My second tip is to go slowly. Don't try and speed up your timeline and think, I just want to be better in 2 weeks. Like, I'm sorry to say, it's probably not going to happen. It is a little bit of a time-consuming journey, but don't give up. There is hope. There is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. From someone who has been there at the absolute worst end of the scale, I can tell you right now, my life is pretty much back to normal, and I have so many of my symptoms completely under control, and I really, really hope that you can get to this point as well. Tip number 3 is to listen to your body and try to follow the IC or alkaline diet. If you can make as many substitutions to your food as your budget and your lifestyle permits, that is 100% going to start getting you some results almost instantly. As soon as you cut out foods that flare your bladder, you will be feeling so much better. Your body will be thanking you, and your bladder will naturally be starting to feel a lot less inflamed. Tip number 4 is to drink a lot of water. So boring, I know, but I got one of these timer water bottles. This is a 1 liter water bottle, and it's got the time of day broken down in hours. I definitely drink 2 of these a day. It helps flush my whole bladder and my body out, and I couldn't recommend this enough. Tip number 5 is to track your diet. I went and bought a cute organizer from a nice stationery store, and I would literally write exactly what I was eating every day for the whole week, and anytime I had a flare-up, I would highlight that particular day or the day before and try and work out what food it was that triggered me. So now I want to go over a couple of the vitamins and things that I would take to either avoid a flare or to deal with a flare that I was currently having. First one might seem a little bit terrifying, but it's apple cider vinegar. So I got these tablets, which are apple cider vinegar or ACV with the mother. I would take one of these every single day. It is alkaline once in the body, so you don't have to worry about this causing a flare-up. And I found that these really stopped me from getting a flare-up. Like, I could feel it coming on, and then when I would take these, it would just dissipate. Another really helpful supplement is magnesium. I often was taking this for the gym because it reduces muscle cramping and pain, but it's also really good for interstitial cystitis because the same thing, you're feeling cramping, nerve pain, muscle pain, your body is probably quite tense because you yourself are feeling stressed, and this is really going to help you relax. It also supports your nervous system health. Now, if you're flaring, I was recommended this product. I no longer really take this because I haven't experienced a flare in a while, but it's called D-Mannose. It is a naturally occurring sugar, and this can be made by a compounding pharmacist, but mine is Now brand. I found it online. They're vegetarian capsules. I have no idea if they work or not, but I used to take 3 of them a day when I was going through a flare, and I assume they helped with some of my symptoms. One thing that really worked for me when I felt a flare coming on or I wanted to shorten the symptoms, and I guess this would also work for normal people when they have a UTI, is Hyprex. I don't know if you can get these everywhere, but these are just on the shelf. You do not need a prescription to get these tablets for the suppression or elimination of urinary tract bacteria. And as you know, when you have a urine sample taken and it only comes back with trace levels of bacteria, a GP will often deny you the medication, which is probably a good thing because you don't want to be taking medications 24/7. But these tablets will help get rid of that little niggling bit of bacteria that's causing you to feel those UTI-like symptoms. So I'd really recommend getting your hands on those. I always have these in my house, and I definitely still take them to this day. Something else that's really amazing for pain management is a wheat pack. I often just lay in bed with my wheat pack sitting here on top of my bladder and my belly, and it really, really helps reduce the symptoms. You could make it cold and leave it in the freezer, or you can heat it up in the microwave if you prefer it warm. Now, onto the surgery that kind of turned this whole thing around for me. So I was still really struggling with flares on and off. It felt a lot more manageable after the hydrodistension. I think I had 2 or 3 more of those procedures done by the same specialist. He also suggested that I either go off the pill or change pills. I did try and do this back then, but it was just too much to take on board while being crazy hormonal on a pill and also just trying to deal with my bladder symptoms. So I didn't end up going through with that. But that is definitely something that changed a lot of my symptoms for me as well. I was on Yasmin and I'm now taking Levolin. My symptoms definitely almost halved when I was taking Levolin. And when I did some digging online, I found that a lot of people said that Yas pill or Yasmin was kind of increasing some of their frequency of getting UTIs. So if you happen to be on one of those pills, that might be something that's worth investigating as well. So at that point, I was probably feeling about 40% better. And I was just sort of thinking, if this is as good as it gets, I really don't see how this is a good quality of life. I was still getting frequent flare-ups whenever I would try and experiment with food or if I would go out and drink with my friends. I really just felt like I wasn't making any progress and I just stagnated at that level. So I went back and saw my specialist and I asked if there was any new options available. That's when he mentioned to me that I would be a perfect candidate for a clinical trial that they were running from a local university here. And I was just like, sign me up. This was music to my ears really, because I think in America, painful bladder syndrome and interstitial cystitis is much better understood. But in Australia, I had a lot of doctors who would deny that my condition even existed. It was extremely frustrating to be met with that by a GP when I would try and explain to them that I needed a referral to go back and see my specialist. So this trial came in 2 parts. There was a placebo group and there was a group who would be given a bladder installation of chlorpactin, which my understanding is it was something that was used in wartime to heal a wound when someone was on the field. Kind of sounded a little bit intense to me, but I really didn't care. I was just willing to try absolutely anything. He did warn me that a girl 2 weeks prior to me had a pretty adverse reaction to it. But like I said, if you're feeling that desperate, you really just don't care and you just think any chance that I can take that I might get better, I'm gonna take it. So I went in and had this treatment done. Let me tell you, when I woke up from it, I was bawling my eyes out from the pain. And I just thought, oh my God, what have I done to myself? That was 5 years ago now. And I have to tell you, I've not been to hospital since. I would say the combination of having that treatment done by my specialist and also completely changing and sticking to an alkaline diet has really led me to where I am today. I did really feel like over the last few years, I've had to retrain my bladder. When you have the hydrodistension or these kind of installations that you can get in hospital, it stretches your bladder. I think the point of it is to make your bladder feel full so that you don't have to go to the toilet so frequently. For me, now that I'm more healed and more back to normal, I really need to remember to still go to the bathroom because I can pretty much hold my bladder all day. So what would be my suggestions for you? Well, I would have to say find someone to talk to who understands what you're going through, and just remember that it's okay to not be okay, and you are going to have some really shit days. And I really just hope that you have somebody that you can talk to about that, whether that be a friend or a medical professional that really just understands where you're at. In terms of healing, I would suggest trying to incorporate some movement back into your day, whether that's in the form of watching a 10-minute yoga video that you can follow along with, or going for a really gentle, low impact half-an-hour walk. Whatever it is, I can honestly say that reincorporating movement back into my day really helped my body. It's a no-brainer really that incorporating some kind of movement into your day is really great for your mental health and also your physical health. In terms of the food, the alkaline diet, like I said, I found really, really effective. I would also suggest trying to buy the best kind of organic food that you can afford. If you cannot afford that, then make sure you're really avoiding buying anything in a tin. If you turn over any tin, you'll be able to see some of the ingredients. There's ones in the 300 and 200 category, which are types of acidic preservatives. So when you're buying buying things to make a salad, for example, if beetroot happens to be a healthy, healing food, then just buy fresh beets or buy organic beets that have been vacuum sealed. Do not buy any tinned food that is put in with any emulsifiers or any of these acidic things. It essentially means that they have been washed in acid, and that will definitely be triggering a flare-up. I currently follow what is essentially a paleo-based diet that is really full of lots of high fats and omega-3s like fish and hemp seeds. That seems to be how my body runs at its absolute optimum now. You can also incorporate things into smoothies like bananas, cacao powder, vitamin E oil, which is great for getting rid of free radicals in the body. Coconut oil is another great one. Any of these foods which kind of have the look and feel that they would be silky on the inside, if that makes sense. I feel like they're going to lubricate your insides, and that's what I think about when I'm eating or drinking certain things like that. Another really great thing, if you can get your hands on it, is a kefir. If you're not lactose intolerant, then by all means go and get a dairy one, but for me, I get a coconut kefir, and I try and have a shot of this every single day. Otherwise, just try and go really slow with food. You may have to cut out a bunch of spices, things like lemons and chilies. I can actually reincorporate a fair few of these items now in my diet, and there's obviously other ways that you can spice up your food naturally as well. Like, I like to put parsley or coriander freshly chopped into a lot of my salads, so any of that interest that might have come from something sweet like a tomato that you now can't have, you can add back in other ways to still maintain meals that have a decent flavour. Just remember, you won't be limited in your food options forever, but on a positive note, I did lose weight following this diet just by complete coincidence and as a little bit of an accident, so we'll count that down as a little bonus for having to deal with all of this crap over the years. The main message that I wanted to share in this video is that you really can take control and get your life back. So if you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and tick the little notification bell. I will be putting up more content on my channel to help anybody who is going through this illness. I really hope that this video has in some small way helped you on your journey to recovery and to heal from this chronic illness. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.